Tonight, you step quietly into a world of fading light and whispered wonder. You do not know it yet, but the sun is setting in colors no painter can capture, shades that slip between gold and crimson and the faintest trace of violet. The air smells of heated stone, marigolds, and the faint hint of incense from the palace chambers. You are in the court of an emperor who is not content with words or poems. He wants to capture the fleeting, ephemeral glow of a sunset, to translate it into language, into parchment, into a map of color that the world could hold in its hands. You watch him from a shadowed balcony, robes brushing the marble floor, a pen poised above a blank sheet. The gold and red of the sky mirrored in his eyes. The courtiers move round you, their whisper soft, careful, as if afraid the sunset itself might hear them. Servants carry trays of fruit, saffron rice, and sweetmeats, the aroma of which drifts through the halls like a delicate current. Birds call from the gardens, their notes sharp and fleeting, echoing the urgency of the dying light. You follow the emperor as he walks to the edge of the palace terrace. The marble is warm beneath his bare feet. He lifts his gaze to the horizon. For a long moment, neither you nor he breathe. The sun hovers at the edge of the sky, spilling molten gold into the clouds, and you feel it an ache in your chest, a quiet longing, as if time itself is pausing to witness this impossible translation. He speaks softly to no one, words barely carried by the breeze. You strain to hear, and somehow the syllables seem to curl round your senses, colors forming where sound touches air. The courtiers glance uneasily, some confused, some enchanted, none daring to interrupt. The palace seems to hold its breath. The lamps have not yet been lit, and shadows from the terrace columns stretch long and thin, touching the edge of the gardens below. You hear the fountain in the distance, steady, soft, a rhythm that anchors the chaos of colors and light. The emperor dips his brush into ink that glows faintly under the last rays of sun. He pauses, hesitant, as if the pen itself fears inadequacy. You step closer, noticing the sweat on his brow, the intensity in his eyes. He is determined, and yet the sunset defies him. Every hue slips, every shade melts into the next, and still he tries. His servant steps quietly beside him, offering paper, more brushes, more ink. Yet he shakes his head. It is not enough. The sunset cannot be caught in tools. It cannot be translated by effort alone. You watch him, hard tight, knowing that this will be a long, quiet struggle against time itself, and for a moment you realize you are part of this attempt. Not as helper, not as observer, but as witness. To see a man wrestle with the sky, to follow his breath and his heartbeat in rhythm with the dying light, is to step beyond yesterday, beyond routine, into something delicate, fragile, and eternal. The sun dips lower. A crimson glow spills across the palace walls, illuminating the arches, the fountains, the distant mountains. You see the emperor's reflection in the polished marble floor, a blend of determination and awe, his silhouette framed in impossible color. You feel the hush of the world settle over you, and for the first time, understand the quiet insistence of beauty that cannot be tamed. The sun touches the horizon and fades. The sky becomes a gentle indigo. You step back, holding your breath, listening to the distant murmur of the gardens, the soft stir of silk in the corridors, the whisper of leaves against the stone. The emperor lowers his brush, not defeated, but paused, suspended in the wonder of what has been witnessed, and tonight. As you close your eyes, the memory of molten gold, crimson, and violet settles within you. You carry it, fragile and alive, into the soft hush of evening, knowing that tomorrow the struggle will begin again. Before the first rays of dawn, you are awake again. The palace is quiet, but not empty. A soft murmur of life persists in the corridors, servants moving carefully so as not to disturb the lingering night. The air smells of jasmine and dew, carrying a chill that brushes against your skin. You step barefoot on the marble floor, feeling its cold kiss, and follow the echo of the Emperor's early footsteps. The terrace calls you first. The sun has not yet risen, but the horizon glows faintly, promising the colors that will come. The Emperor is there already, wrapped in a shawl of deep crimson, his eyes fixed on the distant mountains. He does not notice you at first. He is listening to the silence, measuring the sky, feeling its slow pulse as if it were a living entity. You approach cautiously. The wind carries the faint scent of incense from the temple below, mingled with the earthy aroma of the garden. The fountain hums softly in the distance. Birds begin to stir, tiny bursts of song that sound hesitant in the early light. Each sound strikes you as both delicate and urgent. Like a whisper of something the world cannot repeat, the Emperor speaks softly to the air. He murmurs in Persian, fragments of verse and observation, words meant to capture not only color but emotion. His brush floats above paper, poised to translate a feeling that cannot be held. You realize that the act of watching him is itself a lesson, to see, to notice, to linger in the delicate details of light and shadow. A servant appears, offering ink, but he waves it away. The Emperor is patient, letting the colors form on their own in his mind before they touch the paper. You watch the slow, deliberate process of thought, and you feel a sense of reverence. Even in repetition, sunrise after sunrise, sunset after sunset, each moment carries a subtle uniqueness that cannot be captured fully. Only witnessed, the air shifts. A gentle breeze moves through the garden, rustling the leaves and carrying the faint scent of marigolds. Petals fall softly onto the terrace floor, catching the light of the emerging sun. You bend slightly to touch one, feeling its delicate texture, and are reminded that beauty is both transient and eternal. The Emperor seems to notice, glancing briefly at your hand. There is a quiet acknowledgement in his eyes. The small details matter as much as the grandeur. The sky begins to shift. Colors emerge slowly, gold bleeding into pink, pink deepening into crimson, crimson fading into violet. The Emperor moves his brush in long, patient strokes, yet he pauses often, observing rather than forcing the translation. You feel the tension in the air, the quiet struggle to hold the unholdable, to give voice to light itself. A poet approaches, his voice slow, reciting lines that attempt to frame the sunrise in words. The Emperor listens politely, nodding occasionally, yet his focus remains on the canvas of the sky. You notice the subtle frustration in the poet's eyes. The sky resists being translated. And you understand then that not all beauty can be captured. Not all truth can be spoken. Some things exist only to be experienced, to be felt. You move closer to the fountain, dipping your fingers in the cool water. The surface reflects the first hints of gold, shimmering and alive. The shard from the previous evening lies nearby, forgotten for now, but you feel its quiet presence as a reminder that memory and observation are inseparable. Time stretches. The palace, the terrace, the guns all seem suspended in delicate rhythm. You hear distant footsteps, the soft rattle of utensils, a guard clearing his throat. Each sound, each shadow, each glimmer of color feels amplified, as though the world itself is urging you to notice, to stay awake, to bear witness. The Emperor finally pauses. He sets down his brush and looks at the sky, letting its colors wash over him, untranslatable, fleeting. You realize that this pause, this acceptance of what cannot be held, is perhaps more powerful than any attempt at translation. It is an understanding that the world resists mastery, that beauty defies containment. You breathe in the cool air, the scent of dawn filling your lungs. For a moment, The world is perfectly still. You are neither observer nor participant, yet both. The sunrise has begun, but it is incomplete without your presence to notice, to feel, to remember. And as the light spreads across the palace walls, you feel the quiet pull of eternity, the knowledge that these moments, though fleeting, echo beyond time. You carry them with you, woven into the rhythm of your own breath, a silent record of beauty that no paper, no pen, no emperor can fully capture. The palace feels different today. Though nothing has changed, marble walls gleam in the soft morning light, fountains glisten, and the gardens hum faintly with birdsong. Yet you move through the halls with a sense of unease, a whisper of awareness that even beauty carries struggle. The emperor is already awake, pacing slowly along the terrace. His gaze lingers on the horizon, tracing the invisible paths where sky meets earth. You notice the subtle weariness in his shoulders, the faint line of concentration across his brow. To translate a sunset is no simple task. It is an endeavor that consumes both mind and spirit, a trial not of skill but of patience. You watch him, standing silent, observing the rhythm of light as if it were a living entity. The sky shifts imperceptibly, gold deepening into amber, amber melting into soft rose. Each movement challenges him, a reminder that nature's poetry cannot be rewritten on parchment. He dips his brush into ink, yet hesitates, knowing that the strokes he can make will never truly hold the essence of the fleeting sky. The courtiers surround him, offering advice, suggesting colors, quoting verses from poets who have tried and failed before. Yet the emperor does not heed them. He is alone in his endeavor, not in loneliness, but in singular focus. You feel the weight of that solitude pressing on him, and in witnessing it, you feel it pressing on yourself. You walk closer, noticing the small details, the delicate tremor of his hand, the faint glisten of sweat at his hairline, the almost imperceptible sighs he observes the horizon. You realize that to witness this is to become part of the struggle itself, to feel the tension between desire and impossibility. The servants bring brushes and pigments, yet he shakes his head. Not tools, he seems to say. Only observation, patience, and presence can attempt the translation. He bends closer to the paper, but it remains empty. Each attempted stroke feels insufficient. The colors of dawn resist capture, slipping like water through fingers. Marking the permanence that the palace marble demands, a gust of wind carries the fragrance of marigolds and sandalwood, mixing with the faint iron tang from the palace kitchens. It brushes your cheek, reminds you of yesterday, of the shard in your pocket, of the mirror that once showed only yesterdays. You carry these echoes with you, intertwined with the present, as the emperor struggles to hold light in his hand. The sky deepens now, pinks fading into crimson, crimson dissolving into violet. The emperor leans back, watching, letting the brush hover without marking the page. For a moment, the silence stretches between you, heavy with anticipation. You feel the air thick, the world holding its breath. The palace itself leaning closer to witness this attempt at capturing what refuses to be captured. You hear a bird call from the garden below, a brief, bright note. It echoes faintly, mingling with the distant murmur of water from the fountains. You feel the reminder that life continues, indifferent to your presence, indifferent to the emperor's pursuit. Yet in this indifference, there is freedom of permission to observe, to record in memory, to witness without the pressure of mastery. He dips the brush again, attempting one long stroke across the paper, and pauses. His eyes follow the fading light, tracing each subtle gradient. The line of color is imperfect, jagged, incomplete. Yet somehow it carries more truth than any flawless stroke could. You realize then that the attempt itself is what matters. The struggle, the observation, the intimate engagement with impermanence, these are the marks that endure. time slips forward, unnoticed. The palace remains quiet, save for the hum of servants and the gentle rustle of leaves. You step back to give the emperor space, feeling the weight of presence pressing lightly against your shoulders. Every heartbeat, every breath, every flicker of sunlight on the marble becomes part of the story. And as the final glow of the sunrise fades into full morning, the emperor lowers his brush. Not defeated, not triumphant, but quietly transformed. You understand that the act of witnessing, of attempting, of surrendering to the impossible, has reshaped him. And it has reshaped you as well. You step to the edge of the terrace, letting the cool breeze carry your thoughts across the gardens, the fountains, the marble halls. The sunrise is gone, but its memory lingers, vivid and intangible. And you know that you will carry this moment, fragile and untranslatable, like the shard in your pocket, like the reflection in the mirror. Into every step that follows, the day stretches slowly, wrapped in soft warmth and the faint scent of saffron and rosewater that drifts from the kitchens below. You follow the emperor into the inner chambers, where sunlight filters through intricately carved juggers, painting delicate patterns of shadow on the marble floors. Each race seems to carry the memory of the morning's colors, lingering like a gentle reminder that time cannot erase what was observed. The emperor sits before his desk, surrounded by scrolls, brushes, and pigments. He does not speak, but his presence fills the room with quiet intensity. You notice the faint tremor of his hands, the subtle strain in his shoulders, the way his eyes dart between paper and sky. As if measuring what cannot be measured, servants move silently round him, placing inkpots and sheets of parchment with careful reverence. The air carries the soft rustle of silk robes and the muted clatter of trays. You feel the pulse of the palace, steady and slow, and it mirrors your own heartbeat as you take in the quiet ritual unfolding before you. The emperor begins a new attempt. His brush hovers above the parchment, poised like a dancer suspended in mid-motion. He traces long, deliberate lines, yet each stroke seems to dissolve into the next, blending and separating in ways that defy control. You watch, mesmerized, as the attempt to translate light into form continues, imperfect but beautiful. Our poet enters, kneeling respectfully at the corner of the room. He murmurs verses describing the sunrise, comparing its gold to honey, its crimson to the blush of roses. The emperor listens briefly, nods almost imperceptibly, but returns to his work. Words cannot contain the sky, he seems to say. Only observation, patience, and touch can approach understanding. You move closer, leaning slightly over the desk to see the colors more clearly. The hues are a live ember bleeding into rose, rose melting into violet, violet fading to indigo. They resist permanence, yet in their resistance there is life, movement, and truth. You sense the tension in the emperor's chest, the silent struggle to reconcile fleeting beauty with the permanence demanded by paper. Palace and ambition, the walls of the chamber carry echoes of past attempts. Faded sketches pinned in quiet corners, each one a testament to both triumph and failure. You feel the presence of history pressing softly against the room, urging you to notice, to remember, to witness. Each line, each brushstroke, is a story of effort, patience, and quiet obsession. A soft breeze slips through the jarka, carrying the fragrance of jasmine from the gardens below. Petals flutter across the floor, brushing against the emperor's robes. He pauses, tilts his head slightly, and lets a faint smile touch his lips. Even the smallest interaction with nature seems to whisper lessons about patience, observation, and the ephemeral nature of beauty. You notice a shard of glass, tucked beneath the edge of the desk, catching the light. It glows faintly, reflecting the colors of the sky above. You touch it briefly, feeling a shiver of memory and recognition. It is a reminder that observation is a form of translation too. Memory, once witnessed, can carry the hue of experience beyond the reach of words or paint. Hours pass, measured only by the slow tilt of sunlight across the marble floors and the subtle change in the sky visible through the window. The emperor pauses often, leaning back, resting his hand on the desk, his eyes tracing the clouds as they shift and dissolve. Each pause is deliberate, contemplative, an acknowledgement that some beauty is meant to be held in attention, not possession. You feel the weight of quietness settle over the room. The palace hums softly, the gun whispers through the windows, and the emperor's brush hovers again, ready to translate what cannot be translated, to capture what resists capture. You breathe in slowly, letting the rhythm of observation settle in your own chest, feeling connected to the delicate struggle unfolding before you as the day wanes. The sky begins to shift once more, heralding another sunset. You realize that the emperor's endeavor is endless, an eternal dance with light, time, and impermanence. Yet you are not weary, only mesmerized. You understand that the act of striving, the act of noticing, and the act of attempting translation is itself the quiet glory of human life and endeavor that, though never complete, is infinitely profound. The palace is heavy with the quiet power of routine. Marble corridors stretch like rivers of light and shadow, and you feel the weight of history pressing softly against your shoulders. You follow the emperor as he walks toward the courtyard, robes brushing the stone, his gaze lifted toward the sky. The air is rich with the scent of earth, flowers, and the distant tang of ink and parchment. Power is everywhere here, yet it is subtle. The courtiers bow without words, their eyes trained to note every twitch of the emperor's expression. Servants move with quiet precision, aware that a single misstep could ripple through the balance of hierarchy. You notice it too, the delicate web of obedience and observation, of privilege and labor, that structures every moment in the palace. The emperor pauses, watching a bird rise from the fountain. Its wings catch the sunlight, flashing gold and white. He lifts a brush, as though to record it, and then hesitates. The bird moves again, unpredictable, unwilling to be captured. You realize that power, like the sky, cannot be commanded. It is observed, respected, and negotiated within silence. His scribe approaches with scrolls of accounts, taxes, and correspondence. The emperor listens, nods, and signs where needed. Your gaze follows his hand, steady, precise, his symbol of authority exercised without spectacle. You understand that in this world, law is not merely written, it is performed. Every gesture, every signature, every glance carries the weight of command. The sun shifts, spilling warm light into the courtyard. You see the emperor pause again, squinting against its brilliance, then close his eyes and let the warmth settle on his face. The hierarchy, the laws, the power, they are all present, yet fragile. One wrong word, one overlooked detail, could topple a life, a household, an empire. And yet, he moves with calm, knowing that the act of attention is itself a form of control. You watch the children of the court, running in circles, laughing. They are untouched by duty, free for this moment. Yet even they are framed by the palace's invisible structures. You notice how the emperor observes them, not with judgment, but with quiet curiosity. Even in the exercise of supreme power, there is the capacity for wonder, for connection, for reflection. A gardener passes by, carrying a tray of newly planted marigolds. The emperor gestures to him, and the gardener bows, placing the flowers in a patch of sunlight. You notice the care in each movement, the devotion to order and beauty. Power here is not only wielded, it is reflected, mirrored, absorbed, and returned in countless subtle ways. You follow the emperor into the inner gardens, where fountains ripple like liquid glass. The marble pathways gleam under your feet, and the air is filled with the scent of jasmine and mint. He pauses by a pond, watching the reflection of the sky. The brush is in his hand again, hovering above paper, ready to translate light into form. But for now, he observes, and you observe with him. Time stretches. The day continues, and you notice small acts of authority, of discipline, of hierarchy, yet each is tempered by care, observation, and patience. The palace does not crush you with power. It teaches you, if you are willing to watch. You are learning the quiet rhythms of influence, the unspoken codes that govern movement, attention, and action. The emperor leans back, watching shadows stretch across the garden. You feel the subtle weight of inevitability. Laws, power, and obedience will persist, long after the sun has set, long after this day has ended. Yet in this weight, there is rhythm, beauty, and quiet understanding. To witness it is to carry a fragment of it forward, a subtle map of authority and grace that will linger in your memory dot as the sun dips toward the horizon. You see the emperor lift his brush once more. He pauses, then moves deliberately, translating light into ink, imperfection into truth. You realize that power, like sunset, cannot be mastered. It can only be observed, reflected, and honored in the act of attention. And in witnessing this, you are transformed, part of the quiet legacy of those who strive to hold what cannot be held. The palace feels heavier now, almost suffocating in its perfection. The corridors echo with emptiness, though life hums softly in distant chambers. You walk alongside the emperor, sensing a quiet tension beneath his measured steps. His eyes are distant, searching the horizon, the sky, the light, as though seeking something he cannot grasp. You notice the subtle tremor in his hand, the slight slump of his shoulders, the faint line of fatigue etched across his face. The sun has begun its slow descent, painting gold and crimson across the marble walls, but he does not seem to see it. He is consumed, absorbed in a struggle that you can feel in your own chest, the effort to translate beauty, to capture light, to hold on to the ephemeral. You walk behind him, silent, observing. The palace itself seems to watch with you, the silence stretching into every archway, every courtyard, every shadowed niche. The sound of your own breathing feels loud, intrusive, and yet it is the only rhythm grounding you in this tense, fragile moment. He bends over his desk, brushes poised, but no stroke comes. The parchment lies blank, a silent accusation of imperfection. You sense the pressure in the room, thick and almost physical. Every servant, every scribe, every whispering courtier seems suspended, waiting for a movement, a decision, a failure. And the emperor's gaze turns inward, lost in thought, wrestling with the impossible task he has set before himself. You hear him murmur under his breath, fragments of Persian, almost prayers, almost curses, a mixture of devotion and desperation. His voice trembles with frustration, with yearning, with doubt. And you realize this is not a failure of skill, but of the human heart confronting its own limits. You feel it too, an echo of tension, a quiet questioning of your own place in the world. The courtyard outside offers no relief. The fountains sparkle in the dying light. Birds call softly. The scent of flowers drifts through the air, but all these reminders of beauty now feel distant, filtered through the weight of expectation and desire. The emperor leans his forehead against the cool marble of the desk, closing his eyes briefly, as if willing the answer to appear. And in that pause, you feel the fragile humanity that underlies all grandeur, all authority. You remember the shard of glass from the previous night, tucked into your pocket. You touch it lightly, feeling its smooth surface, and for a moment, it offers a faint comfort. The shard, like memory, like observation, is steady where the world is not. It is a reminder that even amidst despair, there is continuity, there is grounding, there is something to hold. A poet appears at the edge of the room. softly reciting lines about sunrise and hope, but the emperor does not respond. He is absorbed in his own inner turmoil, wrestling with beauty that refuses translation. You sense the quiet isolation of power, the loneliness of the one who strives to hold the unholdable, and your heart tightens. Hours pass unnoticed. The sun sinks lower, casting long shadows across the marble floors, but he remains seated, motionless yet tense. You feel the weight of the moment pressing against your chest, a mirror of his own struggle. The palace seems to contract round you, every sound amplified, every shadow stretching long and thin. Finally, he lifts his gaze, eyes glazed, lips pressed tight. You see doubt, fatigue, wonder, and desperation mingling there. The brush hovers once more, a hesitant bridge between effort and surrender. You realize that the act of trying, of facing impossibility head-on, is itself a kind of triumph. And yet it carries with it a subtle ache, a quiet heartbreak. The awareness that some beauty is beyond possession, beyond capture, beyond human reach. You step back slightly, feeling the room's air thick with unsaid words, and painted colors, and the echo of striving. For a moment, time seems suspended. The emperor, the palace, the gardens, the fountains all held in the delicate balance between hope and limitation. And you understand, in a deep, unspoken way, that this is the quiet, unseen cost of greatness, the solitude, the doubt, the intimate knowledge of one's own insufficiency. As evening draws near, the emperor leans back, exhaling slowly, letting the brush rest. He has not conquered the sunset, but he has faced it, wrestled with it, measured its fleeting truth. And in that confrontation, you see both despair and courage intertwined. A reminder that human effort, no matter how imperfect, leaves its mark on memory and time. The palace feels alive with tension today, though the corridors remain quiet. You follow the emperor as he steps onto the terrace, the marble warm beneath his bare feet, the fading sunlight painting long shadows across the gardens. Today is not like yesterday. Today, the emperor faces not only the impossibility of translating light, but the quiet judgment of expectation, of legacy, and of power itself. The courtiers gather silently at a distance, eyes sharp, whispers restrained. Some are anxious, some skeptical, some envious, yet none dare approach. You sense that this moment is a threshold, a moral and emotional crossroad that will ripple through memory long after the sun has set. The emperor lifts his brush, poised above the parchment. The light is fading faster than before, golden hues giving way to deep reds and violet. He hesitates, aware that a single stroke may succeed or fail. He must choose to act boldly, to attempt a daring translation, or to withdraw, leaving the sunset unmarked and his ambition incomplete. You feel the weight of his decision pressing upon you. The air seems thicker, every sound magnified. The flutter of leaves in the garden, the distant murmur of water, the soft scrape of brush against paper. Your own heartbeat synchronizes with his hesitation, every breath a witness to the silent trial unfolding. A messenger arrives, breathless, bearing news of unrest at the city gates. The emperor listens but does not move. He must decide whether to attend to the immediate duty of governance, to leave the translation for later, or to remain here, risking criticism and whispers, pursuing the fleeting beauty before him. You see the moral tension twist across his face, a subtle war between obligation and desire, duty and devotion to the ephemeral. He closes his eyes briefly, letting the breeze carry away the noise of the palace. You notice how the light shifts across his features, highlighting the furrowed line of thought etched in marble-like precision. He is both ruler and observer, caught between external expectation and internal yearning. You feel the quiet power of this moment. The struggle is not only with the sunset, but with the self. The legacy, the moral demand to honor both art and empire. You step closer, observing the trembling of his hand, the faint sheen of sweat along his brow. He opens his eyes and lifts the brush. One long, deliberate stroke touches the paper. The color is imperfect, bleeding into adjacent strokes. Yet it is alive, trembling with the same urgency as the sun in the sky. A courtier whispers, questioning the practicality of this effort. The borders demand attention. The treasury needs guidance. He murmurs, careful to keep his voice low. The emperor does not reply. His decision is clear. He will honor the sunset, even as the world presses in with responsibilities and judgment. You understand, then, that greatness is not in choosing the safe path, but in following the truth of the moment, even at cost. The colors shift faster now as twilight deepens. You see his brush move with a quiet intensity, each stroke deliberate, patient, and full of reverence. The courtiers exchange glances, uncertain whether this act of devotion is brilliance or folly. You realize that in their hesitation, in their judgment, the emperor faces the moral trial fully, to act in alignment with vision and heart. Regardless of approval or outcome, a bird lands nearby, its wings catching the last rays of light. The emperor pauses, watches it briefly, and then returns to the paper, his movements careful yet bold. The bird seems to mirror the conflict in his soul, fleeting, delicate, uncontainable. You feel a quiet shiver run through your body, witnessing the alignment of action, observation, and ethical courage in a single moment. Hours feel compressed into minutes as he works. The ink and pigments mix, imperfect but truthful. Shadows lengthen across the terrace. Marble glows faintly in reflection, and the gardens hold their breath. You notice that the emperor is no longer alone in the struggle. You are present as witness, absorber of tension, companion in trial. Finally, the sun dips below the horizon. Crimson fades to indigo, and the first stars appear, hesitant, in the sky. The emperor lays down his brush. He has not mastered the sunset, nor fully translated it into permanence, but he has acted with integrity, with courage, and with devotion to beauty itself. The moral trial has concluded not with success or failure, but with choice. The choice to honor what is fleeting, the choice to witness, the choice to remain true to the pursuit. You feel the hush of the palace, the silent acknowledgement of effort, the subtle recognition that history is not made only in triumph, but in the courage to engage with impossibility. And you carry that moment, quiet and luminous, within yourself, as part of the living story of the emperor, the sunset, and the fragile human heart striving to translate light. The palace hums with quiet labor. You walk through corridors where light shifts over marble floors, falling on trays of coins, ink pots, and parchment. Every object has purpose. Every motion is measured. You sense the pulse of an empire, not in battles or speeches, but in the careful orchestration of tools, labor, and exchange. The emperor moves through the hall, observing scribes at work, artisans mixing pigments, and gardeners tending to precise rows of marigolds and jasmine. Each person's action contributes to the grand equilibrium of the palace, the silent machinery of economy and survival that underpins the world of light and color he chases. A craftsman approaches with a new pigment, rare and vibrant. Its cost is steep. The dye is extracted from crushed minerals, handled with care, its value measured in days of labor. The emperor examines it thoughtfully, weighing not only its hue, but its scarcity, the effort invested in its creation. You sense how every resource in this world carries its own story. A web of human effort connecting palace to mountain, garden to river. The scribes tally accounts meticulously, ink flowing over parchment like slow rivers. Coins shift hands in quiet ceremony, each marking survival and sustenance, the delicate balance of labor and reward. You notice the intricate systems in play: taxes collected, artisans paid, materials allocated, The empire moves not through chaos, but through careful calculation, a symphony of economy, technology, and discipline. The emperor pauses near a carpenter shaping a frame for a mirror. He runs a hand along the wood, feeling its grain, noting how each curve will reflect light. Even in the pursuit of beauty, he is aware of cost and labor, the intersection of art and survival. You realize that every act of creation in this palace is tethered to both human effort and material scarcity. A reminder that beauty exists within constraints. You walk past the kitchens, where cooks measure spices, water, and grains with precision. One misstep could spoil meals for dozens, and the emperor observes it all, aware that even sustenance is a matter of careful planning. Tools, brushes, ink pots, chisels, knives are not mere objects. They are lifelines, instruments of survival, conduits of skill and labor that shape the palace's reality. The gardens themselves are a testament to ingenuity. Channels carry water to every corner. Fountains balance flow and pressure. And every plant is placed with intention. Technology and tradition intertwine. Irrigation meets artistry. And you sense the invisible architecture of survival that allows the emperor to pursue ephemeral sunsets while the empire continues to breathe. A messenger arrives with news from distant provinces. Trade caravans delayed, artisans in Gujarat struggling, taxes in Bengal requiring adjustment. The emperor listens, nods, and considers the solution silently. You see that every choice has consequence, every movement a link in the chain of survival for thousands. Economy is not abstract here, it is lived, felt, measured in the lives of those who build, craft, and serve. The pigments call to him again. He lifts a rare shade, weighing its value in both cost and effect. You sense a quiet calculation, a negotiation between desire and responsibility. Each stroke of his brush now is mindful, infused not only with artistic intent, but with an understanding of the intricate economy that sustains his pursuit. Time stretches leisurely as the afternoon drifts into evening. Tools are cleaned, coins are counted, scrolls are filed carefully. You follow the emperor to a small study overlooking the garden. He examines his work in progress, the attempt to translate the fleeting sunset, and you notice how every element of economy and labor, every resource, every hand involved, echoes in the brushstrokes before him. And as the sun begins its descent again, painting long, delicate shadows over the courtyard, you realize the quiet truth: survival, beauty, and human effort are intertwined. The emperor's pursuit of translating a sunset is more than art. It is a testament to the careful, deliberate orchestration of an empire's economy, technology, and skill. Without this structure, the colors could not appear, the tools would fail, and the ephemeral glow of light would vanish unnoticed. You breathe in the scented air, feel the pulse of marble and water beneath your feet, and understand that witnessing this delicate machinery of life is a privilege. The empire persists through labor and tools, through careful attention, through the invisible and celebrated work of countless hands. And the sunset, though untranslatable, exists only because of it all. The palace seems to breathe a different rhythm today. The corridors are quiet, yet you feel the hum of countless stories whispered into the marble walls over generations. Legends surround this place of emperors who tamed rivers, of gardens that bloomed by magic, of sunsets that bowed to their commands. And yet, as you walk alongside the emperor, you notice a subtle, persistent tension between myth and reality. He moves through the terrace garden, observing the subtle play of light on the fountains. The stories told by poets and travelers speak of grandeur beyond measure, of a ruler who commanded the skies. But what you see is different. A man absorbed in patient labor, grappling with impossible tasks, humbled by the ephemeral. The myths speak of power and triumph, yet reality is quiet, demanding. And in glamorous you pause by a jasmine bush, inhaling the faint, sweet fragrance mingled with the earthy scent of marble heated by the sun. The emperor dips his brush into ink, attempting again to translate the shifting sky. You notice how each stroke resists perfection, each line a reminder that nature defies legend. The stories you were told as a child of flawless emperors who could bend light to their will pale against the truth of effort, patience, and imperfection as scribe approaches, bearing news of distant provinces, as though the weight of empire itself cannot be suspended for artistic pursuit. The emperor listens, nods, then gestures him away. You feel the quiet defiance in that choice. The myth of control cannot capture the subtle truth of focus, persistence, and devotion to the fleeting. Reality demands attention, not heroics. You see the gardeners tending to delicate marigolds, irrigating them with meticulous care. Legend would have you believe that gardens flourished under mere command. Yet here, you witness daily labor, skill, and unrelenting attention. The beauty is real, but the cost, the struggle, the small acts of maintenance, these are the truths hidden behind stories. The emperor lifts his brush once more, painting the deepening sunset, and you realize how fragile human effort is against nature. The myths would have you believe in instantaneous mastery, in grandeur without patience. Reality, as you observe it, is a dialogue with imperfection, a negotiation with time, and a constant awareness of limits. In the distance, the palace bells toll, marking the passage of hours. Servants move quietly, unseen, their labor essential yet invisible. You think of how myths erase the hands that sustain beauty and power. The emperor's effort is solitary, meticulous, and imperfect, yet more profound than any story can convey. It is human, grounded, alive. The colors of the sunset shift again, impossible to capture fully. Crimson melts into violet, gold into amber, and the emperor's brush traces lines that approximate, yet never fully succeed. You feel the quiet tension between the ideal and the real, the legend and the lived experience. You sense that this is the essence of life within the palace, an existence where striving, observing, and witnessing are more enduring than tales of effortless greatness. A poet enters, reciting lines of grandeur meant to glorify the emperor's reign. The emperor listens politely, then returns to the painting. You notice a small smile of recognition. The difference between myth and reality is not rejection, but understanding. The legend serves as inspiration, yet the truth, the labor, the patience, the impermanences where life is actually lived. You step back, letting the scene settle into your memory. The palace is alive, the guns persistent, the sunset fleeting. Myths promise mastery over nature, over light, over time. Reality whispers of impermanence, quiet labor, and beauty that exists only when observed, cherished, and respected. You feel privileged to witness this subtle truth, to carry it silently, woven into the rhythm of your own breath. And as the sun dips below the horizon, leaving trails of indigo and violet across the sky, you understand. The emperor's attempt to translate a sunset is more than an artistic pursuit, it is a dialogue with reality, a meditation on imperfection, a quiet defiance of legend. The myths may speak louder, but the truth endures in attention, presence, and the delicate, human act of witnessing. The palace is quiet now, save for the faint ripple of water in the fountains and the soft murmur of wind through the jaricas. You follow the emperor to a small chamber overlooking the gardens, where the fading sunset casts long, delicate shadows across the marble floor. Today is a moment of reflection, a turning point not marked by battle or decree, but by the quiet awareness of time, legacy, and the traces we leave behind. He stands at the window, eyes fixed on the horizon. The sky, once ablaze with gold and crimson, has softened to deep indigo, the first stars appearing like faint whispers. He lets the brush hover above the paper, motionless, a pulse heavy with intention. You feel the tension in the air, the delicate balance between what has been achieved and what remains ephemeral. The emperor's gaze drifts over the gardens, the fountains, the courtyards, and the servants moving silently within their routine. Everything seems ordinary, yet you sense the quiet magnitude of what this day represents. The act of translating a sunset, the effort to capture fleeting light, becomes a metaphor for legacy, that which cannot be fully contained, yet leaves an indelible mark on memory. You notice the small imperfections on the parchment, the strokes that bled, the colors that resisted containment, the gaps between intention and realization, and yet these imperfections carry a beauty all their own, a reflection of human effort, patience, and dedication. The emperor recognizes this too, allowing the truth of imperfection to coexist with ambition, understanding that legacy is not perfection, but persistence and presence. A courtier enters quietly, holding a scroll of past edicts and records. He bows, placing it before the emperor. You see the weight of centuries in those documents, the decisions, triumphs, and mistakes of rulers long gone. The emperor glances at them briefly, then returns to his painting. You understand. The past and present coexist, and legacy is an interplay of action, observation, and reflection. The garden below glows in the soft twilight. You notice the ripple of a fountain catching the last traces of light, petals drifting on the water like fragments of memory. Each element reminds you that time moves relentlessly, yet leaves behind patterns, traces, and echoes. The emperor traces one last line across the paper, deliberate, patient, imbued with both acceptance and reverence. You feel the quiet power of this act. A turning point is not always dramatic. Sometimes it is subtle, a moment of understanding, a realization of continuity and impermanence. The emperor's brush, the failing light, the marble corridors, they speak of choices, of effort, and of the fragile human desire to translate fleeting beauty into permanence. A servant carries a small lantern, its glow mingling with the last hints of twilight. The emperor does not turn, but you notice his acknowledgement, a nod to the continuity of care, of labor, of life within the palace. Every action, however minor, contributes to legacy, like each stroke of his brush contributing to the translation of the sunset. The stars grow brighter as night approaches. You see him step back from the desk, eyes lingering on the work completed, unfinished yet full of meaning. Legacy, you realize, is not in completing the impossible, but in the courage to engage with it, to honor the fleeting, and to leave traces that others may witness, remember, and carry forward. You breathe in the cool night air, scented faintly with jasmine and sandalwood, feeling the quiet pulse of history round you. The emperor's turning point is subtle yet profound. He accepts imperfection, acknowledges the limits of human endeavor, and embraces the beauty of effort itself. And in that acceptance, the palace, the gardens, the sunset, and even you are transformed, witnesses to a moment that will echo long after the light has faded. And as the last glow of twilight vanishes, leaving the sky deep and still, you realize that legacy is less about conquest or command, and more about presence, observation, and the delicate, persistent act of striving to capture beauty even when capture is impossible. The palace exhales as night falls. The last traces of sunlight vanish, leaving the courtyards bathed in a silvery glow, marble and stone softened by the quiet of evening. You walk beside the emperor through corridors lined with glowing lanterns, each flickering flame reflecting off gilded surfaces, painting fleeting patterns of light and shadow. You feel the hush of the palace round you, the soft murmur of servants tidying chambers, the gentle ripple of fountains now catching only moonlight, the gardens, still fragrant with jasmine and marigold, hum faintly with nocturnal life. You notice crickets hidden among the hedges, their tiny calls punctuating the serene rhythm of night. The emperor steps into the Zenana, the inner quarters where silk curtains sway gently, stirred by the soft night breeze. He does not speak, yet his presence commands calm. You follow, sensing the delicate ritual about to unfold, a slow, quiet preparation for rest, an acknowledgement that even emperors must succumb to the rhythms of sleep and reflection. He kneels briefly in the inner temple, incense curling upward in fragile spirals, scent of sandalwood and rosewood lingering. You watch as he closes his eyes, hands folded, whispering prayers or perhaps fragments of poetry, words meant more for grounding than for display. The act is intimate, unhurried, a ritual of surrender and presence. His servant enters with a tray of perfumed water and a small cloth. The emperor washes his hands and face, the cool liquid carrying away the heat of the day, the weight of observation, and the tension of striving. You notice the deliberate slowness, the reverence in each movement, as if even a simple gesture is a continuation of the day's meditation on beauty, effort, and impermanence. You step outside onto a small balcony, observing the palace from a gentle distance. Lanterns flicker, fountains whisper, and the distant city seems muted, softened by night. The emperor's brush, the paintings of the day, the unfinished translation of the sunset, they exist now as echoes in memory. Waiting for the morrow, nightfall absorbs them quietly, allowing the soul a pause, a moment to breathe. A gentle breeze stirs the curtains, carrying scents of night-blooming flowers. The emperor lies upon a bed draped in fine silk, the subtle coolness against his skin balm. You sense the rhythm of preparation, a soft exhalation, the folding of hands, a final glance toward the window where the last star gleams. Sleep is not escape here. It is continuation, reflection, and subtle communion with the world, both seen and unseen. You notice the flickering of a candle nearby, its flame steady yet alive, mirroring the balance of effort and surrender. He closes his eyes fully, yet his presence remains in the room, a quiet, luminous echo of the day's striving. You feel the weight of history, of labor, of beauty, all settling gently into rest. The palace holds its breath. Marble corridors, gardens, fountains, and ink-stained desks all exhale together. You, too, feel the calm spread through your chest, a gentle surrender to rhythm, time, and the quiet heartbeat of night. The emperor dreams, or perhaps observes in stillness the untranslatable light of the sunset mingling with memory in the soft darkness of sleep. And in this hutch, you understand that nightfall is not an ending. It is a continuation of attention, care, and presence, the rituals of evening, the cleansing, the incense. The whispered prayers are threads connecting effort, observation, and reflection. Sleep carries forward the act of witnessing, the labor of beauty, and the quiet courage of facing what cannot be held. You take a final breath, letting the palace, the gardens, and the emperor's quiet form settle into memory. Nightfall is a sanctuary, a soft pause that preserves the day's subtle victories and failures. The world, for a moment, is still, and you, too, are part of this stillness, a witness to the delicate, enduring pulse of human striving and impermanence. The palace lies in quiet repose. Lanterns glow softly, casting gentle halos over marble floors, and the gardens exhale the faint scent of jasmine and sandalwood. You walk slowly through the corridors, letting your fingers brush over carved stone, feeling the pulse of centuries beneath your touch. Tonight, the world feels suspended, as though the day's labors, the emperor's striving, and the fleeting sunsets all rest in stillness together. The emperor sits by the window, eyes tracing the first hints of dawn in the sky. He does not speak. You understand that words are not needed. The silence itself carries meaning. Each shadow, each flicker of candlelight, each soft ripple of water in the fountain speaks of effort, impermanence, and the delicate persistence of human endeavor. You notice the parchment on the desk, the unfinished translation of the sunset. It is imperfect, yet beautiful, an echo of patience, attention, and courage. You realize that this is the true legacy, not perfection, not legend, not myth, but the persistent act of engagement with fleeting beauty, of presence in the face of impossibility. The corridors are still, the gardens hushed. Servants move quietly, tending lanterns, closing windows, adjusting cushions. Every small action contributes to the palace's rhythm, the delicate balance of care, labor, and life. You feel privileged to witness this, to understand that the world of emperors, gardens, and ink-stained parchment is not only about power, but about subtle entrance, observation, and devotion. You step closer to the emperor. His hand hovers over the parchment once more, a gentle gesture of reflection rather than creation. You notice the faint tremor in his fingers, the calm of his breath, the quiet acceptance of imperfection. In this moment, you feel the weight of history and the lightness of witnessing converge. Legacy is carried in observation, in memory, in the gentle act of being present. The night dissolves slowly into dawn. A bird calls in the distance, its song trembling with the freshness of morning. You inhale the scent of dew on marble and leaves, the faint aroma of incense lingering. Time moves quietly, but within it, you carry the echo of effort, patience, and courage that you have witnessed. The emperor's translation of light, though incomplete, has already left its mark in memory. You turn, walking back through the palace, noting the subtle beauty in each archway, each fountain, each thread of silk and gold. The world continues, vast and intricate. Yet, for a brief moment, you have seen the fragile perfection of human striving, the quiet courage of facing impossible tasks, and the delicate intimacy of present and now. As your own breath slows, as the world seems to exhale, you are part of this quiet story, a witness to the delicate pulse of history. The emperor has tried to capture a sunset, yet in doing so, he has shown you that beauty, effort, and presence are the truest inheritance. You lived it, you felt it, and now, as sleep draws near, you are invited to carry it with you. Let me know in the comments, could you have witnessed or survived a single day within these walls, where beauty and effort intertwine so closely? And if you are still here, listening to the whispers of marble, fountains, and fading ink, you are among the rare few who hold ancient voices in your blood. Sleep now, storyteller, carrying the quiet, luminous pulse of a day lived in pursuit of the impossible.